Friends, last year, financial year 21-22 was a big hit for startups in India, and IPO was so busy. It collected lot of crores and crores and crores of people and crores of money and capitalized so many crores. And but 2022 IPO season is not with so many numbers, but it is coming up. Let us hope this year also we will get good capitalization out of these IPOs. And grand IPO, the so much celebrated IPO, the so much sung IPO is present day IPO of the LIC, Life Insurance Corporation of India, which is not a company so far, but the 80 million people have already come up with demat accounts to participate and to earn profits or listing day gains or whatever from the LIC. And the whole ministry and government of India is working overtime to see that the LIC IPO is a grand success with great fanfare, and the people are fully energized to participate in it and opened 80 million demat accounts to find place in the LIC IPO participation. Thanks. And Nirmala Sitharaman has a great items to tell. This is Nirmala Sitharaman. A great explanation. And here are points 1, 2, 3, 4, specifically dealing with LIC. And here this is what she says, and I read. First, initially I will read 2 and later I will read 2. So listen to me as I read them. On LIC IPO, after pulling the Jagannath Rath to a point where the Lord is ready to enter the temple, it is not easy to hold back the Rath and say, hold on, you can't enter now. So, many people have been involved in pulling the Rath. After creating so much excitement and fervor around the Rath, it is difficult to suddenly stop midway. That is what Nirmala Sitharaman says. So, it is not possible to stop all of a sudden the LIC IPO. And I read from here, the one point. Market conditions have taken a turn for the worse recently because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. You indicated in earlier interactions that you will be going ahead with the LIC IPO. But is there a rethink on that now? Would you consider scaling down the size of the issue or moderating the offer price to ensure better response? This is the question posed by the newspaper people. And her answer goes like this. When I last commented on this matter, the tension was building up. Now there is full-scale war. Therefore, I need to go back and review the situation. Ideally, I would like to go ahead with it because it is something we have planned for some time purely based on Indian considerations. But now, If global considerations warrant that I need to look at it, I wouldn't mind looking at it again. So, if the global considerations are the other way around, Indian considerations are one way around. They both are having conflicting sides. So that is what Nirmala Sitharaman says. And I read from another question posed by the paperman. A key step to preparing LIC for the IPO was changing its surplus distribution policy. Until now, of all the surpluses generated by the LIC, 95% belonged to policyholders and 5% was retained, and some of it paid to the government. It also helped that LIC didn't have other shareholders. But now, with other shareholders coming into the equation, LIC is proposing a 90-10 split. 90-10 split. There is a view that policyholders will lose as a result. Policyholders will lose as a result. How have you considered this aspect while preparing for the IPO? Have you considered this while preparing for IPO? And Finance Minister's answer is like this. Listen to me. I can tell you that LIC's functioning has been thoroughly analyzed before preparing for this IPO. Once the IPO decision was taken, surely the policyholders have been kept in mind. So, one change we have really focused on is to ensure that LIC's board is democratized so that the policyholder as a large stakeholder is given a place. But when the process of administration itself changes, the shares in surplus also need to be reformatted. We can't say the policyholder is the loser. We can't say that the policyholder is the loser. When we reallocate the surplus because he will gain from higher dividends too as a shareholder. Whenever dividends are given out, shareholders among policyholders will benefit. So this is the great interview. I have read only 2 points now. I am reserved these 2 points for the next few minutes. So hold on with that. To understand how the surpluses money will be distributed among the policyholders and what are the views of our finance minister. And you don't need a vyakhyana to understand what budget is trying to say. Vyakhyana means commentary. LIC IPO is not a joke. So much matter has been brought out for our understanding and for our commenting of everybody. It is said that the LIC is not a company, but today it is directly being listed. How a organization not being a company can be turned into can we find a place in IPO. They have their plans and many big brains are working on that and they want money. Here the problems are the surpluses of money should be split in 90-10 proportion. Those people who are 100 are now become 10. 10 they will be congested and put and assorted into 10%. And the others, foreign institutional investors, retail investors will be placed separately, and QIB, though those also will be surplus adjusted in that. So LIC has so many things we need to understand about the IPO LIC, and here we read one more news here. Curbs on Russia may hit foreign institutional interest in LIC. We are planning an LIC, feeling that the FDI people quota will share the burden and invest so much and pull the LIC IPO. But when the curbs on Russia are hitting FIIs around the world, then the IPO may get crippled. That is where we need to boost and give support. I read from this. Please listen. Stumbling blocks. Many investors stuck in Russia as stock markets are closed. Many investors stuck in Russia as stock markets are closed. Stocks to take a beating globally as West steps up punitive measures. Russian stock markets have been closed since the invasion began. So what is the fate? I read. Sweeping sanctions against Russia and the expulsion of several Russian banks from the financial messaging platform SWIFT could dampen foreign institutions' participation in the share sale of LIC. US investors, for instance, with investments in Russian market, are not in a position to withdraw any securities and invest them in something like an LIC. So, for global investors, it has become an issue. The government still plans to sell 5% stake in the country's largest insurer by March end to raise as much as 75,000 crore. However, the Russian invasion of Ukraine and punitive measures against Russia have driven up oil prices and hammered stocks worldwide, putting a question mark over the timing and success of the initial public offering. LIC is yet to decide the offer price for the IPO, which will be the largest Indian stock market history. Top government officials are in discussions to decide on the timing of the IPO. The IPO will be crucial to meet the government's divestment target of 78,000 crore for year 2022. The target is unlikely to be met if the government fails to list LIC by 31st March. Note please. If the government is unable to list before March 31st, target is unlikely to be met. Escalating prices of crude oil, which impacts inflation and volatility in the Indian markets as a fallout of the ongoing crisis, are also being weighed by the government in deciding the timing. Second, the government does not want to delay the IPO too much, as it may lose the momentum gained in talks with the potential investors and bankers. So the timing, everybody hitting on their heads to arrive at the timing period in this hard hit time. divestment targets apart, now the actual rollout of IPO getting into doldrums. Therefore, are certain unanticipated events that have right now. We are closely watching the market, and certainly whatever the government will do, we will do in the best interest of the investors and also the IPO. Government's intent has been to list LIC by 31st March, but the war in Europe has created a dynamic situation. We are closely watching the situation, and since you are dealing with the market all the time, we have to be watchful and make our strategy accordingly, says Tuhin Kanta Pandey, the secretary. The cabinet approved foreign direct investment of up to 20% under the automatic route in LICs to facilitate foreign investment in the insurer. The government is seeking a valuation of the least 15 trillion for LIC based on the 5.39 trillion embedded value. 5.39 trillion embedded value worked out by the actuarial firm Milliman Advisors. So the Milliman Advisors have valued this embedded value at 5.39 trillion, impacting the demand for new vehicles. Trillion. See, you see how the top brass is working out to bring the, and the picture has rightly put it here. The fog of war on LIC and the stumbling blocks. It should be rolled out by 31st March. So now the talk is maybe it may go to next quarter, say April. So one way we can say things are not working in our favor. LIC IPO is showing its capacity. Sometimes that is why they say operation successful, patient died. We don't expect it, but still it is like that. The saying is like that. They wanted to do it by 31st March. Another 15 days left. And meanwhile, with virtual AGMs, LIC moves another step to turn to a listed entity. So before it becomes a listed entity, some organizational restructuring also has to take place. LIC gets a CFO. Meanwhile, LIC appointed Sunil Agarwal as its Chief Financial Officer for 3 years. Shubhangi Sanjay Soman, Executive Director at LIC, was holding charge of this portfolio. This is the first time LIC is appointing an outsider as CFO. The CFO post is contractual, and LIC had invited applications for this post in September. So Agarwal is having good experience at Nippon for over 12 years and other ICICI departments also. And now, in the run-up to its IPO and listing, the center has over the last 2 years taken several initiatives, including bringing amendments to the LIC Act to ensure that the insurer adheres to various norms under the Companies Act, including having a board structure and committees, having outstanding equity shares with limited liability that can be traded in stock exchanges, and the creation of the post of chief officer at the company secretary. Chief officer and a company secretary. I repeat, including bringing amendments to the LIC Act to ensure that the insurer adheres to various norms under the Companies Act, including having a board structure and reiterated and committees having outstanding equity shares with a limited liability that can be traded in a stock exchange, and creation of the post of chief financial officer. The government is looking to offload 5% of the PSU insurer and raise at least 65,000 crore. However, given the Black Swan event of Russia-Ukraine war, indications are that the government will reassess the timing of the IPO and may take a call to defer it until market conditions improve. Friends, this is another paper. I need to stick it somewhere here. Okay. Virtual AGMs, LIC moves another step forward. Coming to the FDI up to 20% allowed in LIC. So FDI up to 20% allowed in LIC. Minor tweaks made to facilitate FDI in other corporate bodies too. FDI reform will further enhance ease of doing business. The Union Cabinet on Saturday approved an amendment in the foreign direct investment policy to facilitate FDI up to 20% in IPO bound life insurance corporation of India. FDI up to 20% under the automatic route is being allowed in LIC, a government source told. Another minor enhancements in the existing FDI policy have also been carried out in order to provide an updated, consistent and easily comprehensible FDI framework. The FDI policy reform will further enhance ease of doing business in the country, leading to larger FDI inflows and thereby contributing to growth of investment, income and employment. The government has approved listing of shares of LIC, a statutory corporation established under this LIC Act 1956 on the stock market through an IPO by part sale of government stake in it and raising fresh equity capital for LIC. But the FDI policy currently lists only insurance company and intermediaries or insurance intermediaries under the insurance sector. LIC, being a statutory corporation, is not covered under either. Further, no limit is prescribed for foreign investment in LIC under the LIC Act 1956, the Insurance Act 1938, the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority Act 1999, or regulations made under the respective acts. Automatic route. What is the automatic route? Since, as per present FDI policy, the ceiling for public sector bank is 20% on government approval route, it has been decided to allow foreign investment up to 20% for LIC and such other bodies corporate. Further, in order to expedite the capital raising process, such FDI has been kept on automatic route, as is in the case of rest of the insurance sector. Listing the benefit of the minor enhancements in the existing FDI policy, it would facilitate foreign investment in LIC and other such bodies and help the government in its objective of disinvestment where required. It will ensure alignment with the overall intent objective of the FDI policy. Increased FDI inflows will supplement domestic capital, technology transfer, skill development for accelerated economic growth and development across the sectors to support the implementation of Atmanirbhar Bharat. FDI inflows on the rise. FDI inflows in India stood at 45.1.5 billion in 2014-15 and have increased since then. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic, India attracted the highest ever FDI inflows of $81.97 billion during the financial year 21, 10% higher than that in the financial year 20 at 74.39 billion. These increasing trends are an endorsement of India's status as a preferred investment destination among global investors. I repeat, these increasing trends are an endorsement of India's status as a preferred investment destination among global investors. So note this. FDI 20% allowed. So we again turn to Finance Minister in this and read the two other questions, balance pending, and let us understand from what our Finance Minister has to say about this IPO. So the balance two questions which we left behind now. Typically, private sector promoters don't hesitate to put off their IPOs if market conditions are less than ideal. As the government sets yearly targets for disinvestment, does that impose a constraint on such decisions? I read the question again. Typically, private sector promoters don't hesitate to put off their IPOs if market conditions are less than ideal. As the government sets yearly targets for disinvestment, does that impose a constraint on such decisions? The answer of our finance ministers. No, I don't think that's a factor. Yes, when a private sector promoter takes this call, he has to only explain this to the company board. But I have to explain it to the whole world. If it is taken back, our finance minister or government is answerable to whole subcontinent. And next question. Does it make sense for the government to move away from the yearly targets for disinvestment and to work to say a 5-year plan or vision for it? And the answer is, I would say yes and no. Yes, because as you say, the success of an IPO does depend on market conditions. In 2019, it was not ideal to go to the market. In 2020, conditions improved, but we couldn't proceed due to COVID. But I would also say no. This is not wholly driven by budgetary considerations. We don't think on the lines of we have committed so much for disinvestment, so we need to somehow push it through. IPOs like the LIC require so much of due diligence and groundwork. IPOs like LIC require lot of due diligence and groundwork. After pulling the Jagannath Rath to a point where the Lord is ready to enter into the temple, it is not easy to hold back the Rath and say, hold on, you can't enter now. So many people have been involved in pulling that Rath. After creating so much excitement and fervor around the Rath, it is difficult to suddenly stop midway. That is the position. And the finance minister has very clearly said, and we will go on this at another time. It's totally 4 questions were on this LIC IPO, and other questions on tax and NSE scam. We will read them some other time. But for now, this is like this, and we will just again pin it back. And some more news before we conclude. So this is all only to understand more and more about LIC IPO. Investor interest will be the key in LIC IPO, says Deepam Pandey. LIC is not really a strategic investment, but it is a very important event as it is bringing LIC, which is a very old organization, to wider public ownership. This is also one of the important objectives of the government. We have brought in several listings recently, such as Railtel and IRCTC. It is because of the LIC IPO proposal that 10 million new demat accounts have been opened. Deepam has been holding road shows with the global investors for past 2 weeks after government filed the draft IPO papers on 13th February for the approval of the Securities and Exchange Board of India. The road shows have been going on well with the sovereign wealth funds, alternative investment funds, pension funds, mutual funds, and new investors across the markets, including the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and Japan, showing interest, according to an official who spoke on condition of anonymity. The government aims to sell 5% of its shareholding in the country's largest insurer through an offer for sale aiming to garner as much as 75,000 crore. Cabinet approved foreign direct investment of up to 20% under the automatic route in LIC to facilitate foreign investment in the insurer. Government is seeking a valuation of at least 15 trillion for LIC based on the 5.39 trillion embedded value worked out by the actuarial firm Milliman Advisors. So the figure is like this. Note the figure at least. The figure is embedded value 5.39. $5.39 trillion. 5.39 trillion, and expected valuation is on that 15 trillion valuation. Expected. $5.39 trillion embedded value. And so our cabinet secretary is working to bring that embedded value to a capitalization of 15 trillion. I read it again. The government is seeking a valuation of at least 15 trillion for LIC based on the 5.39 trillion embedded value worked out by the actuarial firm Milliman Advisors. Investment bankers advising the government on the share sale have said that the money raised will depend on investor appetite. See the investor appetite? We have to wait and see the investor appetite, another big word worth mentioning. Investor appetite. Investor appetite. So success depends on the investor's appetite. LIC IPO and the great story about it. And we are collecting from so many papers of the same organizations from the different dates. So what people have told on different dates, and all is good, and still investor interest key in LIC IPO, says Pandey. The government will decide in the timing of the initial IPO of Life Insurance Corporation of India, keeping in mind the interest of investors amid the ongoing Russia and Ukraine war. Tuhin Kanta Pandey, Secretary of the Department of Investment and Public Asset Management, DIPAM. The government intends to do IPO by March end, but the Russia-Ukraine war has created a dynamic situation that the government is closely monitoring. There are certain unanticipated events which have taken right now. We are closely watching market, and certainly whatever the government will do, we will do in the best interest of investors and also the IPO. Government would soon decide on the timing of the LIC IPO. The government aims to list the country's largest insurer by 31st March. So wait up to 31st March, and till then keep gaining some information about this great IPO on LIC, and develop the knowledge, and keep growing and enter into IPO market. With this, Dil Se with Ratnam signing off. Subscribe, learn more on financial topics. Thank you. Bye.